Knowing that ADHD time blindness isn't a personal failure, it's a brain function difference. It's hard to understand and it's hard to communicate, but when you start with understanding yourself and figuring out what works for you, you'll understand how to manage your time better. Hello, truth tellers, and welcome back to the ADHD Scapegoat podcast, where we talk about everything ADHD and scapegoating. I'm Angie.
I'm Jeremy, and today we're going to discuss ADHD, time blindness, and the paradox of being both highly intuitive yet struggling with time management.
Yes. So this impacted my daily life for a very long time, and there are definitely times where it still does, even though I have tools now. But I always used to be late. And it was a combination of not knowing how long something would take, but also I went through a very long period of dealing with my OCD rituals. And when it comes to, we'll do a podcast on OCD at some point, but the OCD rituals end up, you have to do them over and over and they stop you from moving forward. So a lot of times, even if I did have sort of an idea of how long something would take, if I was like highly stressed or there was like a lot of pressure, my OCD went into high gear and it would always take way longer than I thought. But when it comes to OCD, you have to do those rituals in order to move forward. So you kind of get stuck. So it was a combination of not knowing, having the OCD rituals, and also not having support or tools to properly communicate my needs in order to do something in a certain amount of time or to get somewhere on time. And I think part of why we want to talk about this is just acknowledgement that the understanding this is not about laziness or carelessness. ADHD brains are wired differently. So to the outside world or from our dysfunctional family messaging, we can have internalized feelings of shame, not measuring up, and being called lazy, irresponsible, selfish, for missing deadlines or not completing a chore or being late for a school function or a family obligation or something. And getting backlash for something that is not your fault. It's your brain wiring, and you just need support and tools to know how to work with it instead of against it is really unfair. And it just becomes this stigma that we have to fight. So the ADHD brain doesn't have a reliable internal clock. So we experience time in now and not now. I know I've talked about that before, but with your executive function weaknesses, your procrastination, impulsivity, you can have moments of hyperfocus. Then you have moments where it's like decision paralysis, where everything's too overwhelming. I can't decide. And the frustration of knowing what needs to be done, you're just struggling to execute it. That's what your executive functioning does. So that is almost always what's going on in the ADHD brain. We know what we have to do. We cannot execute it. So why estimating how long something will take for our ADHD brains is difficult, because we have our interest-based nervous system. So the way it feels based on loving doing something versus thinking something is boring. If something is boring, this is taking forever. This is why waiting in lines or, being forced to sit still, things like that are so taxing. And when boredom is legitimately, for ADHDers, you feel pain. It feels like torture. And when you're having fun, it's like the whole idea of time flies when you're having fun. It completely disintegrates with ADHD hyperfocus. And when you hyperfocus, you're not just like underestimating how long something will take. Time does not exist. Nothing exists except what you're doing. You forget to eat, drink water, go to the bathroom, unclench your jaw. That's a big one for me. All of a sudden I'm like, oh, yep. What's going on? Why am I doing that? But it's like everything else disappears to make room for you to focus on that one thing.
I just want to interject in. We talked about this before we started recording, where this is a concept that's really hard for me to understand. I think the closest thing that I can get to it is I'm a video editor, and so I will get lost in a project. I could sit down and I'm working on a video project right now. I could sit down and work on that video for the entire day. I will get hungry at some point, but I could, except for going to the bathroom and maybe grabbing a snack, I could sit there from 8 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon and think that it's 9, it's only been an hour and a half. Yeah, it's been an 8-hour workday. And I will also realize that I haven't been breathing.
Right.
I hold my breath when I edit videos for some reason. I don't stand up. I don't move my body. I'm just so focused on, I just need to make that one little tweak. If I can get this color better, if I can make this sound better, I get completely lost in it. So I get that. Mm-hmm. But you're saying that the ADHD brain, that's what it's like for pretty much any task.
That you love doing.
That you love doing. Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, it also could be though, you get hyper-focused in your curiosity about something. So maybe you don't necessarily love something, but you're curious and you're going to like get to the bottom of that curiosity. You're going to figure it out. Or sometimes when decision paralysis comes up, I want to make the best decision. And so I'm going to, research 9,000 different things. And when the first one is probably good enough, right? But you go, I don't want to make the wrong decision because that fear of failure or that feeling like you're going to let someone down, even if it's just yourself sometimes. There's a lot of things that come from being undiagnosed for so long and coming from a very critical family where perfectionism and not wanting to make a mistake also gets in the way. But yeah, there's just it happens a lot in the way our brain latches on to something that we're either interested in or when our curiosity takes over.
But there's never any thought of, or it doesn't happen very often, of, but I do have to do that one thing later, so I need to make sure.
I think that if you have a routine in place, you can think of that. But we'll talk about that too, because bringing up the idea of, it's like a joke where they say, what's kryptonite for the ADHD brain? A 3 p.m. appointment, like middle of the day. Like I can't do anything before then, and then afterward,
because I don't have enough time to actually get the thing done.
Right, and because I don't know how long things are going to take.
Okay.
And that's why, what do I always do? First thing in the morning, what's your first appointment? Give me your first appointment. My kids are up at the crack of dawn. Yeah. I'm up, it doesn't matter. Yeah. So unless again, we're back to self-awareness always and understanding the way your ADHD shows up. You have to say okay, today I don't have any appointments. Dive into whatever I'm going to dive into. If I say, okay, I have this appointment, you make adjustments. But again, that's only if you have the tools and you have the support and you understand what you're going through. I think when you don't have the support and you don't have the tools, you tend to, you'll just start something, or you think you have enough time. Sure, I can dive into this thing. Yes, I'm interested in it. Yes, I really like doing it, but I'll definitely have time. And then all of a sudden it's like you set an alarm so that you don't miss the thing, but you set the alarm because that was time to leave, but you're still not dressed. You're still, like all that stuff happens. So, excuse me, you have to set yourself up ahead of time if you know those things are coming up.
Makes sense.
Otherwise, you miss it.
Which you may get into this later, but you set the alarm for the time to leave.
Right.
You have alarms for everything. And it drives me nuts
sometimes,
but I understand why you do it, and I'm happy for it sometimes because I'll forget, I'll get lost in, I'll be playing Uno with one of the boys and the alarm will go off for a bath. I didn't remember. It was in the calendar, but I didn't remember that it was bath night or whatever, or I lost track of time because I'm just focused on that. The alarms do help.
And the alarms are annoying sometimes for me too.
Sure.
But it's also, especially with 2 young kids,
I understand
it feels
fully why it's necessary.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, the goal is to get to the alarm as soon as possible and do the thing as soon as possible.
100%.
But sometimes I'll be out of the room and the alarm will get silenced by someone else.
I think what I need to do in that scenario, I mean, the boys are good at it now too, where they'll hear it and Otis will pop up and be like, oh, I'll get it. And he'll turn it off. But I do it a lot where you'll leave your phone right next to me. I won't know that it's there. And then all of a sudden the crickets chirp and it scares me. And so I'm immediately annoyed and go, nope, and turn it off. And then I forget to tell you what that alarm was for.
Right. I feel like this is very relatable. There's got to be people who deal with this. Please.
This happens.
This happens. But yeah, so we'll hyper focus and we'll lose hours and not realize.
Got it.
So yes, you need to set up these things to help protect yourself from that frustration of the deadline. And here's the paradox. ADHDers can sense problems coming before others, but we still miss our own deadlines. And our hypervigilance to our environment does not help with our internal clock. They're completely different things. So to say, oh, well, you can sense all of these things. Why can't you sense the time? Right? It's not a fun paradox. But the ADHD genius that when we have supports and when we understand ourselves could be really great. And that's why I think a lot of times the examples of people with ADHD who are super successful, like artists and, musicians and just really brilliant athletes, like different people, right? Like they have this brain difference, but they're fully supported and they know how to use their strengths and they know how to respond to their struggles. So by and large, a majority of ADHDers are highly intelligent and creative problem solvers. And sometimes having that natural ability will become even stronger because we have to be in the outside world. Like, we can't just rely on what everyone else is doing because it doesn't work for our brains. And no one's showing us how to do it the way it does work for our brain. So we have to create it. And as the scapegoat in my family, you didn't have support, or there wasn't even a thought that to look at my differences or that they were anything but a problem. So a message was to do it this way, or if you can't, you're a failure. And I think a lot of times, even without, a negative family messaging, ADHDers can feel that from teachers, from, friends, like, you're not doing it. This, all you have to do is do this. And we're like, why? That doesn't work for me. I can't do that. That feels wrong to me. You can internalize feeling like a failure. And that genius gives you the ability to create workarounds. So we come up with unconventional methods as ADHDers to manage time. So we can, like I said, set a routine that I'm going to do this when I need to go to an appointment. Or you can get your body into a flow to a certain extent with a routine. So if every day we're consistent, or if you, of course the mic's up here and now I just want to keep messing with this. Why do I keep doing that? I'm so sorry.
Everybody does.
I know. Sorry. But you have this, if every day were the same and this were the structure, here's how it would work. And so you can get into that flow to a certain extent. But again, any disruption in the schedule or something will throw that off. So you can't just rely on like, this is how my day goes and every day is going to go the same, because like everyone else, you would inevitably fail. But some sort of routine to kind of be able to come back to this space to get back on track is important.
I think that routine and structure is crucial for anybody. I feel better when I'm following some sort of daily structure or daily routine versus, I come downstairs, I make breakfast for the boys, I get them their pills, then I make their lunch while I'm making coffee. If I do some of those things out of order, I feel thrown. But is there an urge as someone with ADHD? Is there pushback on routine? Does that get boring? It's like, oh my God, every time I have an appointment, I've got to do this, this, and this. And just like, is there an urge to just say,
Yes.
Screw it, I'm going to do it this way this time? And then
Yes.
I assume that there are consequences, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But I also think it depends on your level of awareness and your level of stress. So if you're highly stressed and you get into a routine that you see that really works for you, you can lean on that. You don't have to think about that step, which is a huge thing because our thoughts don't stop. We can't filter them out. We really struggle with having to have a focused thought at a focused time. So when you actually don't have to think of that thing because it becomes part of your natural routine of, this is my process before I have an appointment, or this is my morning routine, you can just lean on it. And then when something feels off, you can go back and go, okay, what didn't I do? What am I missing? And then be able to go, oh, okay, that's what it was. Huh, I wonder why I forgot that today. Oh, it's probably because, I forgot to do the water bottles for the boys because they weren't in their spot where I normally grab them and I got called away. You know what I mean? So having that routine allows you to kind of feel in your body when something is off, but it also gives you that structure to rely on so you don't have to think. But when you say, is there that natural pushback to be like, nope, I'm not doing it? Like, even when you're the one who set these routine rules for yourself, nope, I don't do it as like I don't know, like a rebellion thing, but I'm always like, how could I do this better? How could I do this better?
Okay, you're trying to make improvement. I guess more, I'm thinking like, okay, I'm sure there's, like you get that dopamine hit the first time you say, okay, I'm going to set up, I know I have this dentist appointment. It's at 8:30, so I know I have to do this, this, and this. You set your alarms, you get it, and you get there at 8:25, and you're like, yes, I did it. I'm sure that's a rush, right? The third time you do that, there's no way that you get the adrenaline hit that you got the first time. And so are you looking to then, are you a risk taker? Are you trying to like switch it up so that like, ooh, what if I do this instead? And then you still get there. Is that like, do you still get that same like, oh yeah, I did it. Next time I'll do it this way. And
Or when you just have like a no stress outing because you set all these things in place and you keep doing it that same way. And because you do it that same way, you can go out and do your outing and come home and regroup really quickly. You're not like grabbing all of the things. You're not like overstimulated. You're not, and a lot of factors, especially when you leave the house. I think there's a lot of internal work that we do that is impacted by other people when we go out and do other things. So we don't want to stay holed up in our house. We love, having connection with people, but it does throw a wrench in certain things. So when you have your things in place that you can follow, you're able to respond better. You're able to have these, more successful outings. Even if it's just like a doctor's appointment or something, you have these more successful outings and you're able to just like boom, 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 do the things you have to do, come home, and you can get back on track. So yes, I think there's always like room for how can I do this better, or maybe I don't like doing it this way. Like, I think it's also good to recognize, you know what? I know this worked for me for a really long time. It doesn't work anymore. And shifting. So, and moving me. Oh, and now I just banged the desk.
sorry.
So anyway, the workarounds are things that you can kind of do for yourself once you get your routine in place, because you have to be able to adjust to changes in schedule or things that pop up, because any distraction or interruption can really throw you. So that's why I use the alarms for different sounds based on a different task. So I don't necessarily even need to look at what time it is, but I just know what I need to do. So it's that's a different way of doing it. Like, I know some people they have one alarm sound, and anytime they need an alarm, it's like, okay, what time is it? What do I need to do? That's too much thought for me when I have all these other thoughts. I don't want to have to think about it. I want to know automatically. The duck sound means it's boys' medicine time. The duck quacking.
Cricket means it's bedtime.
The cricket means it's bedtime. Yeah. What's the other one I have for myself? Just put my...
It's like the nuclear
No, it's not. It's like
power plant.
It's like I don't know, it's like a xylophone, kind of something for me to, like, when I would drink my my Spark vitamin drink, it conflicts with my medicine. So I had to stop drinking that an hour before I take my medicine. That's another random alarm, but like, everybody has them that has ADHD. And a lot of times, not just the alarms, but having like a visual, like my hourglass timer here that's really soothing for me. I find personally that doing like a countdown clock and like having it on your phone, like a timer, like I'm going to do the Pomodoro technique, do 25 minutes, and it's sitting there in bold numbers, just counting down to me how long. No.
Yeah, no,
that's too much pressure.
Pure anxiety.
Yeah, and like I'll turn it over, but then I'm like, oh, is my phone is it silent? Is it, how is it going to let me know? Or like, I don't want to just all of a sudden be jarred out of the time that, oh my God, I just got hyper-focused, and now, oh my God, it scared the crap out of me because I wasn't even thinking, whoa, really? 30 minutes went by? But so I love that. And I also, if I'm trying to figure out how long something takes, like if it's something that I'm I'm doing and I'm like, why is this taking me so long? Or how long is this actually taking me? Because I'm not even paying attention. I need to do this task. I want to set up a plan for my week. How long does that actually take me? I will actually just do a stopwatch and check it. And then for me, that turns into a game where I'm like, okay, can I do it faster next time? Or let me try. And without like, especially with the, creative and coaching and mental work that I'm doing, I don't want to take away from that by trying to do something faster. So there needs to be a balance there. But I will look and see, like that's how I figured out it takes me 7 minutes to curl my hair, because I timed it. And I didn't just time it once, I timed it multiple times so that I understood if one time it takes me 11 minutes, what happened?
Right.
Like something went wrong. And then there's also the idea, the last minute magic. I think a lot of people refer to it as that, but it's like you perform best under pressure because you get that adrenaline rush of it's the last minute. But the problem is that causes you stress. And you get to a point in your life where your responsibilities don't allow for that method to work consistently anymore, as maybe it once did. And so that can happen. Like if we're going to have someone over, I will clean the entire house in an hour. Things like that. Like those things still work. And I don't want to do that task day in, and I don't want to be cleaning day in and day out. I love organization, but I do not want to be cleaning day in and day out. So when I force myself into something I don't enjoy doing into that last minute time frame, that works. Because I don't like doing it, but I'll get it done. And so there still is that contradiction between having this deep intuition and seeing all of these things, knowing these things, realizing these things, even about myself, that other people might not even see, and then struggling with the short-term execution of those things. So here are the strategies to work with your ADHD brain. And I want to reiterate that any of the things that I share, they're things that worked for me, or they're options that you can try, but figuring out what works best for you is just trying different things, testing things out. That's how I figured out what works for me. And externalizing your time is one. So using clocks, timers, visual schedules to see time, whatever way works for you to see the time. So you have to try different tools and be honest with yourself. Does this work, or am I forcing this to work? Because trust me, I tried to force the Pomodoro clock ticking away at me for a while. And I was like, why is this supposed to work? This feels really stressful. And it didn't work. So there's no moral failing attached to that countdown clock not working for me and the hourglass working better. It's just a difference. So body doubling and accountability partners to stay on track. So I think this totally depends on the task, but I definitely think body doubling helps with some of those unwanted tasks that cause you to procrastinate more. So you just need to be sure that your accountability partner is on the same page and you kind of set up boundaries. I've done it with some of my coaching classmates and stuff, and it works because we were both on the same, okay, this is what we're going to work on. We set the boundaries ahead of time. This is what we're going to work on. Hey, if you need a question, can you pop on or give me notice? Or maybe the last, 15 minutes of an hour that we're doing, we would just sit online and do our work at the same time. The last 15 minutes, if any of us has any questions or need to go over anything, then we can ask and give ourselves the rest of the time, or whatever boundaries we set up it, and kind of this is how this will work best for both of us. That's always great to do. But I mean, even just having someone, when we do our workouts, hey, are we doing a workout today? And we have a certain time and we just check in with each other. Hey, that works. And then we know that we both want to do the workout, and some days it feels like you don't want to, but we know, hey, he's going to do it with me. We're going to be there together, and we're committing that to ourselves, and we show up for each other. Mm-hmm. Another thing is making time management engaging. So using rewards and gamifying tasks, like I said. Once you do a stopwatch on how long something's going to take you, okay, can I do it faster next time? Or is the time frame that I've set up accurate? Or once a game I even play when I'm like, I have to do the things I have to do before the things I want to do. So if I get, a funny meme, or like if I see I have Instagram messages from my sister or you or something, I'm like, okay, these are all going to be good. So I'm going to enjoy them. But first I'm going to check, these 3 things off my list, and then I'm going to look at them, and then I can respond. Because otherwise I will just go down that rabbit hole and completely lose track of time.
This could be a slippery slope, though, I'm thinking of our kids. If we're setting a timer and thinking, okay, this is how long it took me to do my math homework, I'm going to try and beat my time. Now they're rushing through their math homework.
Right.
Because they're just trying to beat their time versus, or even like...
Which is why I said, I have to, if I want to beat my time, I also need to do it with quality. As soon as I feel off, and that's why listening to your body and understanding what you really need, because you can feel when something's off, just like in your routine, like, oh, I forgot the water bottles. You go back to going, ugh, no. Yeah, I did it faster, but it was junk, so right. I'm not going to do that. Or, yeah, I did it super fast, but can you even read it?
Now I have rework. Like there will be consequences with homework because they'll rush through it, they'll turn it in, and then they'll have a bad mark. And so they'll either have to redo that page or whatever.
And it's not necessarily about beating your time in the game part. It's about, I really want to nail down how long this takes me. Like, I want to have an accurate sense. To have an accurate sense of time and go, hey, Mom, this homework's going to take me 10 minutes. And that's why I think a lot of teachers, like at our kids' age, read for 20 minutes, because it just gives them that time limit rather than, read a book, because that could take one kid a really long time and take another kid, 3 minutes.
Or even read a chapter. Right? Like, I want you to read 2 chapters when you go home today. Well, 2 chapters to our kids could feel like that'll take me until next Wednesday to do. And some kids will think like, oh, 2 chapters? I was going to read the whole book or what? Like you said.
I think it's just you figure out how this is going to work best for you, and you make it fun for yourself. So you're like, I think a lot of times especially for ADHD, you're like, oh, I figured that out. Like, that's part of the challenge. That's part of the game, is I figured out how long that's going to take me. I guessed that it was going to take me 10 minutes, and it took me 10 minutes exactly. It's so exciting. And then another tip is creating routines that rely on cues, not just willpower. So time blocking is something that I've found is a good practice for not only conserving my energy, but grouping things together. So that way you're not forcing yourself to do things, but rather I get to check these things off my list during this half hour or hour, whatever. Like, if I have 3 phone calls to make, I don't make one and then do something else. I say, I'll make these 3 phone calls during this time block, or I will only respond to emails during this time block, right? And it allows me to, even if the thing is, kind of taxing, it's like, nope, during this time block, I'm going to do this thing. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to complete everything in that time block. It just means this is what I'm going to focus on right now, so you can shut out other distractions. And then the last tip I have is recognizing and managing the emotional impact of your time blindness. So forgiving yourself and not being so hard on yourself and internalizing any sort of shame. It comes down to your own self-awareness and figuring out what works for you. If you know you're going to forget something, it's a trick that I have always used. I don't know if I've brought it up before. Maybe I have. But if it's not by the door when it's time to leave and I need it, I know myself, I'll forget it. So I'll put a Post-it by the door handle. Or if it's like a bag that I can actually hang from the door handle, it's not something I need to use until I leave, I will just hang it on the door handle that I have to leave. Don't lie to yourself and say, oh, I'll remember.
I'm laughing because
I'm pointing at him because
every time I go to the grocery store, every single weekend.
How many times do I have to take a picture of the list and send it to you?
I forget.
It's not every time. It's not.
She gets a text and then a phone call because she doesn't see my text.
I don't see your text.
But she will get a phone call. Could you send me a picture of the grocery list?
Yeah.
Where did you leave it? I think it's on the thing. I come in, without fail, I walk out the door and then I walk back in the door and one of the boys yells, "What did you forget?" Like it's a joke. Like, it's funny. I know Dad's going to forget something.
But if you think about it, if you're trying to be somewhere on time and you're trying to set yourself up for success, you might leave on time, but you told yourself you'd remember that thing, and then you have to turn around to come back and get that thing because you weren't being realistic with yourself. So now you feel mad at yourself for not just doing the thing the first time, and you have to go back. And then what if you're meeting someone, or, you're late for a doctor's appointment and they're like, "Oh, you're late," like the first thing when you come in, or the person that you're meeting is like, "What the hell happened? I'm like sitting here waiting." You feel unreliable. You're late again. So knowing yourself and setting those things up ahead of time allows you to hit those time management goals as well. So we just want to close with knowing that ADHD time blindness isn't a personal failure. It's a brain function difference. And it's hard to understand and it's hard to communicate, but when you start with understanding yourself and figuring out what works for you, you'll understand how to manage your time better. You're not going to always get it right. I still struggle with certain things, especially when I'm starting something new. There's no way to gauge how long something will take me until I've done it multiple times. And sometimes I think, oh yeah, I could totally get that done, and then realize it's actually a bigger project than I thought. So you're not broken, and your creative solutions are proof of your resilience. Do what works for you and make yourself feel better about the way you're spending your time. Until next time.